You're not tired because you work too hard. You're tired because at some point, you lost the invisible control you should have maintained over yourself. That's the trick few realize. Exhaustion doesn't arise when the body fails, but when the mind surrenders. Machiavelli would say that every man carries a small principality within himself, and that when this principality becomes ungoverned, even the simplest actions turn into endless battles. You wake up feeling like you've already started the day late, as if another force were dictating the rhythm of your life. You follow obligations you didn't choose, seek results that don't belong to you, and try to please voices that have no face. All of this costs energy, it costs power, and above all, it costs the feeling of being the master of your own path. The modern world calls this state burnout, but Machiavelli would call it a loss of sovereignty. He believed that no one wears themselves out from excessive movement, but from a lack of direction. And perhaps this is the truth that hurts the most to admit. You are not weak, you are misaligned. You live reacting to what happens, not governing what you want to happen. And the moment a man ceases to govern himself, he becomes easy prey to the small forces that drain his energy without him realizing it. What battles are you fighting today that should never have been yours? What expectations are you trying to fulfill that you didn't even choose? What part of you has given up, questioning to simply obey? The great irony is that exhaustion doesn't set in all at once. It creeps in, first as harmless distractions, then as imposed obligations, and finally as the silent feeling that you've lost control of your own rhythm. And when you realize it, you no longer know if you're living for yourself or for what the world demands. But Machiavelli reminds us that no man grows stronger while serving what weakens him. Recovery begins the moment you face this fact without excuses. Because deep down, you already know that you don't lack energy, you lack control. And regaining that control is the first step to abandoning exhaustion and rebuilding the power you let slip away. There was a time when you moved forward without hesitation. Things demanded effort from you, yes, but there was something inside you that responded with life, with enthusiasm, with that feeling of building something that truly mattered, until, at an almost imperceptible point, everything changed. It wasn't a major event, nor a dramatic crisis. It was a series of small deviations that accumulated silently. You accepted a commitment you didn't want. You gave space to a comparison that made no sense. You stifled a legitimate desire to please someone, and, without realizing it, you began to live according to expectations you never chose. Machiavelli would say that this is the moment when man ceases to be a prince and begins to behave like a subject, obedient, hesitant, divided. Perhaps you remember the first time you felt this weight, a day when you woke up already exhausted, even after sleeping well. Or that meeting where you spoke less than you thought because you feared the judgment of others. Or even that project that once excited you and that, suddenly, began to feel like a prison. None of this is random. These are signs that you have abandoned a part of yourself to play roles that don't belong to you. The energy you lack today is the same energy you gave away in those moments of self-betrayal. And, as Machiavelli emphasizes, all power given without awareness returns in the form of weakness. What's most unsettling is that these concessions seem too small to justify so much exhaustion. But that's precisely the trick. You get used to giving up on yourself in such discrete increments that, when you finally notice, you no longer recognize the path you're following. What would have happened if, on that first detour, you had said no? If you had protected your will, like a ruler protects their borders? Perhaps today you wouldn't be fighting against an exhaustion that didn't stem from work, but from abandoning your own direction. And it is in this recognition that the turning point lies. Recovering your energy requires recovering what you lost back then, authority over yourself. You carry far more than you imagine. It's not just visible tasks, demands, or obligations, but small emotional burdens accumulated over the days. Conversations you didn't want to have, promises you made without real intention, thoughts that keep returning. Machiavelli would say that none of this is harmless. Every useless detail occupies the space where focus, direction, and strength should exist. And when the prince loses the ability to distinguish the essential from the superfluous, his inner republic begins to crumble. Have you ever noticed how certain objects, people, or routines exude a silent weariness? That perpetually messy drawer, that message you avoid replying to, that habit that never brought you any benefit. Small things, but they drain energy like invisible leaks. And yet, you get used to living with them. You even defend the weight that destroys you, as if it were normal. Why? Sometimes the greatest burden isn't what you carry, but what you fear to abandon. Do you really need to keep so many doors open? Is what you call responsibility nothing more than an inherited obligation? Machiavelli would teach that the wise ruler coldly cuts away that which weakens his dominion, even if it seems small, even if it hurts. And it is at this point that the revelation that many avoid facing emerges. Much of their exhaustion does not come from overwork, but from a lack of courage to eliminate the unnecessary. How many things do you keep out of habit, fear, or guilt? How many choices do you postpone to avoid the discomfort of saying enough? Perhaps the most important question is, what would happen if you finally dropped everything you should never have carried? Have you ever noticed how your energy evaporates when you depend on the right impulse to act? Most people believe they need motivation, but history proves otherwise. In Florence, there were records of artisans who worked every day before sunrise, even without any enthusiasm, because they knew that habit was more reliable than any emotion. Machiavelli observed this while studying these ordinary men who, despite their harsh routine, rarely showed exhaustion. The secret? They didn't wait to feel the urge. They acted, and by acting they produced the strength that others sought only in intention. A curious account states that one of the scribes Machiavelli consulted was able to copy hundreds of pages without showing apparent fatigue. When asked how he managed it, he replied that he didn't allow himself to think about the magnitude of the task, only about the next step. It's improbable, but it makes sense. When you don't negotiate with your mind, your body obeys. And when the body obeys, fatigue loses the power it normally possesses. Perhaps what drains you most isn't the effort you need to make, but the energy you waste hesitating. How many times have you felt exhausted without even starting something? How many decisions have you dragged out until you completely lost your enthusiasm? Machiavelli would say that hesitation is the true thief of strength because it creates the illusion that you should only act when you are ready, but nobody is ready. Strong people simply begin and discover the energy in movement. And what if your strength isn't in the motivation you expect, but in the rhythm you haven't yet built? You've probably felt this before. The feeling that even doing everything right, the reward never comes. You work, you dedicate yourself, you try, you persist, but satisfaction never accompanies the effort. This silent frustration corrodes your energy more than any long journey. Machiavelli observed this behavior in rulers who lived anxiously, seeking the people's recognition and therefore became fragile. For him, the error was never in the action, but in the attachment to the result. The man who ties his peace to the outcome loses control over himself and becomes a hostage to what he cannot control. And when a man becomes a hostage, his energy disappears. Imagine a prince who reorganizes the entire city expecting applause, but receives only criticism. His initial reaction is to intensify his efforts even further, believing that more work will generate more approval. But the more he tries to please, the weaker he becomes, because he is acting in the wrong direction. He doesn't realize that a ruler's strength lies in his intention, not in the external response. The tension increases when he realizes that the more he seeks to be loved, the more the people despise him. And that's where Machiavelli intervenes. The prince must free himself from the need for recognition, otherwise he will never be effective. This broken expectation, acting a lot and receiving little, is more common in everyday life than we imagine. How many times have you wasted energy trying to be seen? How many times have you placed your worth in the hands of others, hoping they would confirm something you should affirm yourself? This is the blind spot that drains your strength. You work to be approved, not to evolve. You move to be validated, not to master yourself. And without realizing it, you let the result determine your emotional state. The biggest turning point happens when you realize that you are not tired of the effort, but of the emotional dependence you have created around it. Machiavelli would say that the truly strong man is the one who acts because he needs to act, not because someone will applaud him. Perhaps the most unsettling question is this: how much of your energy has been wasted chasing results that were never under your control? You surrender your strength every time you allow a metric to determine your mood, a critique to define your worth, or approval to confirm your identity. Liberation begins when you act with precision, but accept that the outcome belongs to the world. not to you. And it is precisely this stance, firm, detached, devoid of expectation, that generates the energy so many seek in external formulas. The unexpected thing is that when you stop seeking results, they appear. When you stop begging for recognition, you become respected. When you abandon anxiety about the future, you gain clarity in the present. And this clarity, as Machiavelli would teach, is the true source of power. But there is an even greater force waiting ahead, the force that is born from inner silence, from the harmony between what you think, feel, and do. And it is in this direction that the journey now points. In the end, it all comes down to what Machiavelli always knew. True strength is born when you govern yourself with clarity. It's not magic, nor sudden motivation. It's alignment. When your choices, your limits, and your goals move in the same direction, energy ceases to be a burden and becomes an impulse again. Start with what is within your reach. Eliminate what doesn't serve you. Protect your will. Act with rhythm. And accept that the result will never be entirely yours. Clarity comes when you stop running from who you are and start walking with intention. If you apply this today, even in a simple way, you will have already taken the first step to recover the strength you thought you had lost. If this message helped you, like the video, leave a comment, even anonymously, and subscribe to the channel to continue this journey of self-mastery and inner power.